Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman, and thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, please go do that thing and hit the subscribe button, like the video, do all that jazz, because today we're going to be talking about a movie. And we are the Comic Binge, but the comics can go to the movies too, and this is no exception. We're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Woo! And we all know that this is going to be a very interesting show because we just talked about the Turtles last week. Had a great time. I got another great host of panels here, so I can't wait to get all into it. So again, hit the like button, hit subscribe, all that jazz. And without further ado, I'll bring on our guest here. So again, thank you all for joining us. We'll start with our good buddy here, Tim. Mr. Tim, how are we doing today, sir?
Hello, Paul. Doing great. So glad to be on 2 weeks in a row talking Turtles. So yeah, this is awesome.
2 weeks. It's if we didn't talk enough about everything,
right.
You know, like Star Wars and Batman. You know, I mean, it's all that stuff.
You can never talk too
as
much
always,
about all that stuff.
I could never not get enough talking to you, Tim. You know this. So Tim and I are old. He's one of my best buddies, and I love him to death. So thank you for joining us. I can't wait to talk about this movie with you. So yeah. All right, next person we've got Mr. MJ Michael Daly.
Hi. How's it going? It's good. I'm sad, sad I missed last week's Turtle Talk.
Going
but
well.
Excited to talk about the movie tonight.
Dude, I know. I was bummed. Really quickly before we get our last guest here, how many Turtle comics have you read? Have you read any?
I've never read a single Ninja Turtles comic. Like I'm sure we'll probably get into this a little bit more later, but most of my fandom is from animated shows and video games, probably more than anything. And the movies, the 90s movies. But I should read those IDW comics. So
okay. Well, is it the 80s any show, like the original cartoon?
That was the first thing, and then I think what was the early 2000s one. I honestly don't remember the specific name of it's
always referred to as the 2003 series.
Yeah. I think that was probably the one that I also got into.
All right. Right on. All right, and without further ado, we have the last. He's back. I almost didn't have him on, so someone's like, "Why isn't Michael the Rocketeer going to be back on?" I was like, "That's a very valid point." So I just didn't want to assume you just come on whenever I ask you to, but you said you said some very nice words, and I was very apprecitive. And now
flattery will get me
on all the time.
Apparently.
So,
but I will never. I will never get tired of talking Ninja Turtles.
Hey, look. No, I realize that. I want to be respectful of people's times, all that jazz. So it's just one of those things. So anyway, as you guys all know, we're going to be talking about Mutant Mayhem, the new animated TV series. And if you haven't checked out already last week's episode, we have that in the description. We also have our first show we did for the Turtles called the Comic Book Masterpiece, where we covered the original, I think, 6 or so issues of the Eastman Laird stuff. So definitely check that out. That was a fun episode. Which again, funny enough, didn't have Michael on that show, so I felt really bad. Tim, you
owe me for that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I do. I'm sorry. Tim was on that. Tim was on that show.
I'm fortunate enough to have been on every Ninja Turtle show that you've done, Paul. So thank you.
That just seems to be how it goes for me sometimes. Like I always miss people's first Ninja Turtles episode, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we should bring in Mike."
We should. So, yeah, and I am. We've had such a great time last week. It was awesome. So definitely go check out that episode. So we're going to talk about Mutant Mayhem today, and this was interesting, and I have a lot to say about this movie, really, honestly, and it's crazy to me, and it bums me out that this movie hopefully will have some legs. The box office performance, which I don't really care about that stuff usually, but only because of something like this. I love everything about this movie. Just spoiler alert, I love it. We're gonna have tons of spoilers in this movie. But the thing is, this movie I want to see more of. And I know we're gonna get a sequel and all that stuff. I'll dive into I'll ask you questions about this later on, Michael. But I just want to get this thing supported because there's a lot to love about this, and there's a lot of comparisons you could talk about with Across the Spider-Verse and the Spider-Verse movies. But I also think there's a lot of its own creativity going on too, which we'll get into. So, and obviously, where does it lie with comic books? Which obviously, as it being original comic property, it's kind of speaks for itself. But we'll get more into that as well. But anyway, I'll kind of start with our new person who had missed last week. I guess you kind of set me up a little bit already, MJ here, but you said that you haven't never read a comic book of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles before, and that's no shame. I'm not saying like, how much dare you? But seriously, how dare you? But I guess what about the Turtles? Because I know like you've been a fan for a while. Have you kept up with the films and the cartoon series the whole time? Or are you pretty much just kind of stop and go? Like, what kind of explain your Turtles fandom a little bit for us?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's very much rooted in kind of the original animated series. Like I said, the 2003 animated series, and I think bridging the gap between the original animated series and the 2003 one for me was definitely all of the live action movies, all three of them, mostly the first two, less the third one. I feel like the first two are the ones I would go back to as a kid and watch over and over again. Um, I, and those combined with some of the video games, Turtles in Time, the greatest side-scrolling beat 'em ups ever. I think that kind of
time word.
yeah, those that's kind of was the groundwork for me in my Ninja Turtles fandom, and it's kind of always been something I've enjoyed. I think I haven't caught really any of the most recent animated stuff, but it's kind of rooted in that 90s 2000s. It's just something I always grew up a big fan of.
Okay, so have you been interested in the comics at all, or are you pretty much just like you kind of just keep forgetting about it? Because I'll be honest, like it's easy to forget that there's like a big comic background with these guys, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I mean that's something obviously I think I've always been aware of, and the IDW stuff has always kind of popped up on my radar, but it's not something I've jumped into yet. We've talked previously about the IDW Power Rangers stuff, which I jumped into and really loved. So I think it's definitely on my to-do list, my very, very long comic to-do list that is never ending, I think.
Which, by the way, thanks for bringing that up. I have to ask you about another show I need to invite you on. So just remind me when we're done, after we're done recording. So I'll hit you up. I got an idea about that. Is that very subject? All right. So your fandom is just kind of in steeped less in comics, more in like the other mediums, like TV shows and films. I guess kind of just give me your general thoughts on Mutant Mayhem. And have you seen all the other films before, Michael?
Not the last animated one. I've heard great things. I forget what year it came out, but
2007.
yeah, I've seen those ones. Unfortunately, I have seen those. Almost, I wish I didn't, but yes, the 2007 animated.
This is the one you heard the great things about. This one?
No. I have seen those and they're terrible. But the 2000, I think it's just TMNT. That one.
Yeah, 2007. 2000. We call it 2007, but it's the only one that's just TMNT.
Yeah, that one. I've heard great things. I think I own it on Blu-ray. I think it came in my pizza Blu-ray collection. So need to watch that at some point. But yeah, I think other than that, I came into this one with really high hopes, I think. And it definitely, I think it definitely delivered for what I wanted, what I expected.
Okay, right on. So you've seen besides this one, you've seen all of them, and I want to know right now what was your favorite going into Mutant Mayhem? I'm assuming 1990.
It's probably Secret of the Ooze. I think is probably my favorite.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I love me a ninja rap, some ninja rap.
okay.
You know, I think this. I feel
I
like
mean,
the
who
first
doesn't?
one is probably a better movie. If I had to be like, if I was like rating it as a movie, but I think I have so much attachment to this from my childhood of watching this movie over and over again that this is the one I think that stuck with me the most over the years. So going in, this is probably my favorite, and I think in after watching Mutant Mayhem, it's 1 and 2 between these two. I don't know which one I like. I think I need to watch Mutant Mayhem a second time where I'm ready to dethrone Secret of the Ooze for my personal rankings.
So that was my next question for you. So you consider Mutant Mayhem up there with Secret your favorites at this point? It's either it could be one, but you're saying it's definitely up there.
Yeah, I absolutely, and I'm sure we'll talk a ton about this, but I think for me the biggest thing about
Sure.
Mutant Mayhem that stood out was just it's honestly the first time the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have felt like teenagers, and I think it
Mhm.
just was such a fresh take that it for me like you know I think it feels like such a no-brainer, right? That it's in their name. It's the first word of their name. They should be teenagers. They've
Mhm.
never really felt like teenagers. It maybe felt like 20 something Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I guess that doesn't roll off the tongue as well. And so I think that
No.
that aspect and that of this approach and the animation in this movie is so beautiful. Um, it's such a fresh take from just a pure animation style perspective. I think you could make some comps to Spider Verse, at least in the vein of like going outside the box, kind of breaking the kind of generic animated movie styling that has become so common since Pixar kind of started doing their thing, and I think it was just I think Chris Miller did a great thread. It definitely recommend checking out on Twitter, kind of around when the movie came out. Just recommend talking about the importance of this movie from purely a stylistic expression of them taking such a risk
Mhm.
on this style, and I think super agreed with that kind of approach. I don't think I've seen a animated film so grimy in such a
No,
great way.
no, I have a lot to talk. Oh, worms! You're getting worms out of here. You got lots of worms, which is good. Those are good worms. I want you to get out. Really quickly, you touched on something I really wanted to talk about animation style. I'm going to throw it to one of you guys here in a second, but I just want to say that I have not seen the 2007 animated film, and the animation it just looked like a typical, not typical, but just kind of like, oh, here's an animated movie, cool, right? And the one thing that Spider-Verse has done, and now I think you have movies like Mayhem have really embraced, and is this whole idea of like, let's do something completely different than what the norm wants us to do, and give us give it more stylization, if that's a word. And I just like you said, the grime and just it has such a unique feel that is strictly besides Spider, which again, I'm going to say this right now. This is not Spider Verse. It's inspired. It's definitely inspired by Spider Verse, but it's not like one for one. I was a little worried about that from the trailer. After watching the movie, I was blown away of the uniqueness and the creativity of this film. So, anyway, great point, MJ. We'll get you back here in a second. Uh, Rocketeer, Mr. Michael Templin. I know you have your own show to talk. You've gone crazy about this, but I'm going to ask you a lot of specific questions going into this movie. Were as you were, give me, were you skeptical? And if you weren't, tell me why you weren't. If you weren't skeptical, and what were you feeling like afterwards as a turtle fan, as a hardcore turtle fan?
So for me, like I tend to like the more goofy or like more original takes that when Turtles does. Like my favorite Turtles is probably the least popular one, Rise of the TMNT. Which that movie was, they did an animated movie for that last year, and that it's an incredible movie. Um so I like it when they take chances with this because like I've been a Turtles fan for so long that you start to notice certain things that are kind of always repeated in Turtles. So when they take more chances, I'm more open to that, because like I know the history. I know, they're always going to go to Northampton. We're always going to have a city at war. So let's try new things. Because I always tell people the basic formula for Ninja Turtles is 4 turtle brothers who fight aliens, monsters, robots, or ninjas with their with their rat dad and human friends. Like, that is at its core, that's what Ninja Turtles is. And you can do anything with that. Everything else, like from the 2003 series to Rise to the original cartoon show, like, you can do anything to Last Ronin. Like, you can do anything with that. So I'm more open to change than a lot of other Ninja Turtles fans that I interact with on a regular basis. So I went into the movie not so much skeptical, just really open-minded, and I like to judge these things on its own. Like, I don't like to compare it to the 1990 movie, which is like the gold standard for Ninja Turtles. Because like, this movie isn't trying to be that. Coming out of the movie,
Right.
Coming out of the movie, there were some things I didn't like. There were some choices I didn't care for, but I get what they were going for. And overall, I enjoyed this movie. Like, this was such a treat to watch. And like you were talking about how the animation style and the animation choices that they made, and comparing it to Spider-Verse. And I was just thinking about like the most recent animated movie I've seen in theaters. Actually, now I can't even remember when Spider-Verse came out, because that, like, it feels like a million years ago. But Mario. And it's like, Mario, while that was a colorful movie, like, it's so bland compared to this, because like Mario didn't do anything unique. Like, Mario was that Pixar DreamWorks standard kind of move, or Illumination. That's the company that did it. Like, it just looked like a Despicable Me movie. This felt like animation. This felt like they were achieving something. They were going for, like, every design choice with all of the turtles, with all of the characters. Like, those were specific choices to fit a particular art style. And it was such a treat to watch.
You bring up a great point about how Mario plays it safe, and that's not a bad thing. I'll make that very clear. Like, if everything was just taking chances, it just would be everything would just be a kind of a mess. You know what I mean? Yeah. There has to be like something that grounds something. And I'm very much in the middle. I love when things can get crazy, but I also love like deep standard stuff too, because I don't like to get crazy all the time. I just like, I always call it my baby bear. I love when it's just right,
Yeah.
And Mario, I liked Mario, but I did not leave the theater being like, I want to see that again. I'm like, I'm good. I saw it once.
I haven't even bought it on DVD yet. Like, that's how much like I saw it.
I'm not going to buy
it. Yeah. I think the big difference here is that, like, these are franchises that rely on like references and nostalgia, and where Mario played it safe is that, like, it crammed so many references for you to like, oh, like, I know Mario Kart. Oh, that was the sound I know. Oh, like, it crammed everything from like every Mario iteration into that movie, to the point where like the movie, you take out the references and it's kind of like, okay, what was the plot of the movie? Whereas like Ninja Turtles, the references are here, but they're a lot more subtle, and it's a lot more like, if you know kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the one thing I would say about this movie, and I'm curious to get into to what you didn't like about the movie, because I thought you'd be. I didn't listen to your podcast yet, but I'm going to, because I want to get to. Oh, is it? I thought you released it already. My bad. Okay, good. Okay,
the review dropped today. We recorded it last week.
Okay, so I'm ready to get in the nitty gritty with you on that show, but I'm a little surprised you didn't love it. I thought you liked it more, to be quite honest. I mean, it's the Turtles, you love it, right? But I'm a little surprised. So I'm gonna ask you a little bit in a little bit what your thoughts are on what you didn't care for, but and obviously you can chime in whenever you want. But we'll get back to you in a second. Tim, as one of my best friends on on this planet, and someone I care about, and you have got me back into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You are responsible, sir. I tell me your favorite turtle movie before this. Kind of like I've asked Mr. Rocketeer here, where I don't think you were skeptical, but tell me your feelings kind of going into it, and then tell me your feelings after it, leaving the theater.
Mhm. Yeah, so my favorite one is the 1990 movie, which I know is not going to be a shocker probably to most Turtle fans. But
I can't believe
and going into this movie, I knew it wasn't. I went into not expecting it to reach the heights of the 1990 movie, and just by going into it, also from the trailers and everything I've seen about it, I knew it probably wasn't end up going to be my favorite new version of the Turtles, but still excited to see a new take on it. And just going into it, thinking, no, I'm just excited for this new era of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that's going to kick off with this movie. Because before it came out, they did announce how we're getting the sequel, and then we're going to get some TV series as well to kind of bridge the gap between this movie and the sequel, which I thought was like a really cool move that they're going to do. So just kind of setting the fact that, yeah, this is going to be the next big phase for Ninja Turtles going forward. So that I was looking forward to seeing with the movie, just kind of how it sets the stage for this new version and this new era of Turtles. And when I left the theater, I was very happy with what I saw. I thought not only did it leave me kind of excited for the future of potential stories we may get, which I'm sure we'll get into the ending, but that was something that definitely threw me off and I had to think about for a bit. But I just felt this did its job as far as being just a great new introduction for new Ninja Turtle fans to come in. I think this is a great movie to introduce them to these characters and the stories, to get them to love these characters and to maybe want not only be excited for potential sequels and new stories with this version, but if they really like it, to go explore some of the other versions that we have. So I just think it did a really good job of just reintroducing it to a new audience and just also just being great fun for those of us who have been Turtle fans for years. So yeah, I came out really, really enjoying this, being happy with what we got.
Well, and we have my homie Sketchcraft / Rob. Rob, miss you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Wink, wink. I haven't had a chance to listen to you guys' review yet of Turtles, so if you want to hit me in the comments about what your thoughts are, I'll throw them up there for you. And congratulations to Rob for announcing his Spawn comic that he's working on with Todd McFarlane. That is so rad. And the guy who wrote Chew,
Nice.
which by the way, I've finally figured that out. So I was like, oh, that writer? Oh, that's the guy who wrote Chew. I haven't read the Chew yet, but I'm going to read it. So tell your buddy I will be reading that at some point. But anyway, yeah, hit me up in the comments if you're still watching, and I'll throw them up there for you. So when this movie is something that it is probably one of the best reintroductions to a franchise. Maybe I'm trying to think so. And MJ, you could, I'm not sure, you might have a better idea of like what I'm trying to say here. I don't know, but I'll throw it to you here in a second. But I'm trying to think of a franchise film project. What it could be any medium, right? We're thinking video game, it could be a cartoon, whatever, movie, TV show. I'm trying to think of something that relaunches something to like it really establishes it like, oh, this is actually like it's good again, kind of a thing, right? At least for me. And I, even though this movie's not running away like Barbie or something like that, I do feel like with the critic score and the audience score and the freaking I hate to say it, I hate cinema score. They're all across the board like strong. And and I'm trying to think like I can't think of a better franchise like reintroduction than what we've gotten in this movie off the top of my head. Besides maybe like Homecoming, but even then I feel like you could go to Civil War and be like, well, it kind of you know what I mean? Like you get what I'm saying, right? So I was amazed of how well this movie does a job for giving us what we need for the relearn the Turtles. And as Rocketeer Michael here, you brought up also to me that this was, I think you said this is your favorite origin. Was this what you told me last week? Is that correct?
It's up there. It goes into some parts that I didn't like about it, but it is kind of funny how some people are mad at this origin when it's very much kind of the same thing as the original like Mirage origin. I don't know. Do you want to throw that to me and get into that spoiler talk?
I just want to throw it to you really quick. Just kind of, I want to make sure, because I think you told me, because I want to throw it back to MJ here, because I'm curious what he thinks. So we'll talk about the origin here. That's kind of like my cue, you could say. I'm gonna say right now, like and MJ, you don't know the comic origin, the IDW origin, which is I think my favorite still. Like that's like my favorite. It's vastly different. Let's just put it that way. You know, you can watch the episode last week we talked about the spoilers. We spoil it, but it's bonkers. That's probably my favorite origin. And when you told me last week, Michael, that you liked this one a lot, I was curious. And for those who haven't watched the movie yet, spoiler alert, but whatever, we're spoiling this movie. I gotta tell you, I loved it. I thought it was perfect because, you know, for those who don't know, really quickly, basically Splinter becomes a mutated rat, comes in, you know, raises the turtles as little boys and realizes that, like, I gotta defend them from people. So he learns karate through like TV and through YouTube and through books. And I'm like, that's kind of brilliant, actually, to be quite honest, in my opinion. Because it does a couple things. It makes sense in context, like, okay, like if a mutated rat gets smart enough and realize what's going on and kind of pick up on this a little bit. You know, it's Ninja Turtles. I mean, you gotta stretch it a little bit, right? But I will say it was kind of fun and cute how they did the montage, but also it makes them not so OP. And that's the thing that I thought was really interesting, was they weren't necessarily just these unstoppable, like, you know, ninjas like we got in 1990. Like 1990, that feels like they're juggernauts, man. Like they could take out anybody.
Yep.
You know, but what I love about this movie is that this is the exact opposite. In fact, actually, they're like crappy at fighting, and they have to get better and better as they go. They understand and know how to do some ninja stuff, of course, but they're not like unstoppable threats. And I really thought that was a different take on the characters overall. MJ, what's your take on the origin? And did you like the origin? You know, where's the origin level of all the different things you've seen?
I don't know where I would necessarily rank it, but I definitely agree of like just loving the approach that they took, even just from the execution of how they did it, right? You know, anytime you see kind of a reboot movie like this, you're like, oh, are they gonna spend 30 minutes doing an origin story that I've seen and I know, and it's not really different, but just the kind of snappy way that they were just like, oh yeah, I guess we should kind of, you know, explain how we got to be here, and it's just kind of quick, fun, well executed montage to kind of get you the information you need without spending too long on stuff you more or less kind of know. And I agree with you. I love the source of Splinter, you know, learning the martial arts to teach them and kind of educate them and protect them. I think it definitely is, you know, we are talking, like you said, we're talking about a mutant rat and mutant turtles, but it's more believable than like some of the other ones we've gotten, like in I forget which, I don't even know which of the 90s movies does the like, oh, Splinter was the pet of a martial arts master, and he sits there and trains and watches him the whole time.
1990.
Like, yeah, yep. I forget if we got it there, but yeah, like it's ridiculous, even more so than what we get here. And I think this is the perfect balance and perfect amount of ridiculousness. And I will say I also really loved and got a really good kick out of the kind of the in writing hand waving of why it makes sense that Splinter is so much older than them and like a wise adult, but they're like, you know, they mutated into children. It's like, oh yeah, I was an old rat. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It makes sense when you think about it. Like,
yeah, it does.
He literally says that.
Yeah.
What you segued into what I wanted to talk about. So it's funny because like it's not the origin for Splinter learning martial arts in this movie and the way he did in the 1990, 2003, and Mirage comics isn't too dissimilar. Like it's Splinter as a rat watching somebody else doing martial arts. Like it's the same thing. So
Yep.
it's you're already in that same kind of wheelhouse where it kind of hurt as a fan, but also like at the same time, like I can accept it. I can accept it. Is that we did lose out on Hamato Yoshi, and like that's such a big part of like Turtles. I hate saying lore, but that's for the lore. That's a big part of Ninja Turtles is having Hamato Yoshi there. So not having him be, referenced at all. Like I thought it would have been a cute Easter egg if one of the YouTube videos he watched was Hamato Yoshi, like doing martial arts, like, his channel like on YouTube or something. Like, that would have been
cool.
cute.
Yeah.
But to not have any mention of Hamato Yoshi at all was kind of like, okay, I'm missing out on this. And you get into a bigger talk about like representation and how, he's a Japanese character who's not in the movie now. But at the same time, like Jackie Chan's not Japanese, so like making him a Japanese person is also kind of like weird. So I like where they went with it. Like it made sense for this version to do that. And I love his backstory, giving him a reason to be fearful of humans.
Yeah.
Like making him have that innate fear to like, you just kind of like he doesn't hate humans, he just wants to be left alone. So it's
with his kids, right?
Yeah,
Like that's kind
kids.
of, and I think that's where, and this is where I want to, I'll throw it back to you a little bit, MJ, because that's great stuff there, Michael. One of the things I thought was really cool about, and after MJ, I'll let you go, Tim. One of the things I loved about this movie, and I feel like it's lost a little bit in the Hamato Yoshi thing, which I totally get it. Like, listen, I'm all about like honoring, like that's a great aspect of the character. I grew up on that too with the comic books, from the cartoon or the comics, the cartoon and the movie, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing about this movie, and I kind of already touched on it a little bit, was with the origin, was that it's not really ninja like focused.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I actually liked a lot about this, that they really sacrificed the ninja aspect a lot in this. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think they really emphasized the family, because the thing with Splinter before was like, he was always some like ancient master, of some sort, which again, I'm not saying it's bad, because I love those IDW comics for days, baby. Like I'm not saying, but with this different iteration for kids and for families, it makes a lot more sense, because that family aspect is front and center. Because, not only did Seth Rogen want them to act like teenagers, but what did teenagers deal with? They deal with their families and the growing pains of their parents. And God, I did not look forward to those days by any means. And, and the thing is, when you have Splinter, he's not like he's trying to go out and avenge the world of whatever. He just wants to hang out with his family. And I thought that was really cool. Like, no.
Yeah.
I want boys. You're my boys. I want to protect you. I want to, it all comes from a place of, I don't care about the world. I care about you. And that's different than I think that, and I know Splinter always loves his kids. I'm not saying he doesn't in other iterations, but it felt more like a family. Like he loved his kids, almost, for lack of a better way of saying it, loved his kids more in this iteration than compared to the other iterations.
Yeah.
MJ, do you feel anything? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think it helped Splinter's, in a lot of ways. It simplifies Splinter's character, right? It's very clear. Splinter loves his sons, and like that's his whole motivation. That's whole, there's less kind of backstory or lore to Splinter, and I think it was super successful of just like, and it allowed him, Splinter. I might be taking for granted something from something past, but I feel like as a single movie, it's the most character growth I've ever seen from a Splinter arc, right? Like usually Splinter's just kind of in the background. He's there,
He's the wise sage.
Yeah,
right?
He's there giving them advice, and but he really had an arc here in a way I can't think of a past Turtles movie that has given him an arc, and I think it'll just set him up even further for the kind of the animated show they're doing, the sequel. Like maybe that'll then we can get into the kind of any other backstory and so on.
I'm gonna plug it again just because you haven't seen it.
Do it.
If you want the best Splinter arc, in my opinion, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's kind of like you start the show and he's like this schlubby, ugly guy, and you look at it and it's kind of like Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, where Luke looks at him and is like, you know, you're not a Jedi Master. Like you look at the Splinter and you're like, why is this guy like this? And his character arc over the 2 seasons, because it's only a 39 episode show, and the final like 5 episodes are really what dive into him. But his character arc throughout the 2 seasons is like, oh, I get it. Like it's my favorite Splinter arc. So I just want to plug that.
All right.
But there's
All right.
threads of that in here, whereas like you get kind of that single dad. Because that's very much was Rise Splinter's character, was he was a single dad over teenage boys. And
yeah,
that's something here in this Splinter that we really don't get that often, because he's always like the wise master. So I really like that. I wanted to go back to Paul real quick, what he was saying about like the ninja thing and how it was kind of sacrificed in this movie. I think a lot of people need to remember that like when we were growing up, like ninjas was kind of like a catch-all term for anybody who did martial arts. Like,
true.
Like parents saying like playing Nintendo, even though you were playing a PlayStation, like that was just a thing. It was a catch-all term. And so like, because we would get movies like Three Ninjas and Surf Ninjas that had nothing to do with actual like ninjutsu. And
by the way, those are, if you want to talk about Twitter cinema, that's cinema, baby.
I love
Surf Ninjas.
Surf Ninjas is my favorite. I did a 3-hour podcast on that one years ago. Love that movie. I'm actually friends with one of the actors. So
that's crazy.
The 30th anniversary of the movie is like this month. So but yeah, but that's the thing, is like ninjas was kind of it was a pop culture thing. It wasn't always dudes in black pajamas, you know, being assassins. And I just wanted to touch on that. Going back to Splinter, I just thought it was funny because like the original Mirage Splinter, you read the first issue and it's like he talks about how much he trained them to be assassins for this revenge plot. And then that's kind of it. He didn't have a plan past that. He was never the father figure like to them. That was all stuff that was added in later iterations. Like Mirage Splinter is kind of a jerk. And
yeah.
Like
so
I love the character, like the character growth in the franchise, that they've made him more of this dad figure.
It is quite messed up to raise your children to be an assassin to carry out your revenge plot.
To carry out your revenge. Like he didn't even do it himself. Like he sent 4 15-year-olds to go kill his mortal enemy.
Yeah. Well, so Tim, what's your take on the origin with this right here? I'm curious.
Yeah, overall, I really liked it. I thought it was perfect for this movie and the story they were trying to tell. And I said it before, even on our last episode, I always like the origin where Splinter is actually a human Yoshi transformed into a rat. That's just my preference. But for this one, I really liked how they did it to where, you know, not only was he just a rat mutated and later on by the ooze, but he was just a street alley rat, like not a pet of Yoshi or a rat in a laboratory or anything like that. So he was just a street rat who was always, you know, kind of an outcast even before he was mutated, as they showed in that montage. So the fact that when he found the turtles, and it really sold the fact of why he cared about him so much and wanted to kind of grow family and have this family dynamic with them as them being his sons. And another thing I really liked about it too, as far as the element of him, why he wanted to train them and that fear of humans, is the fact for that sequence where they actually go out to the streets of New York. And it was kind of just out of a love for his kids, because they were in awe of what, you know, life would be like out of the sewer in the city. And he's like, just to try to make them happy, he was going to take them out there. But obviously, as we see, it just goes horribly wrong, and then just sets the course for his fear of humans and his kind of his way of wanting to protect his sons and training them in martial arts with that. But I did like how it came from a different place than we've really seen before. And just kind of wanting to make his sons happy is kind of what started this whole thing and this origin for the turtles. So I really dug that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think that that's where I love the fact that it comes from a place of love, and again, like now we're gonna see the turtles develop as characters more, more than we're just selling them as who they are, as what they are, and we're gonna be entertained by their specific personalities, and the growth is not really going to be there. Like we're getting character growth by all four of the turtles in this movie. And I haven't seen Rise, so I can't excuse me. I can't comment on that, but it feels like this is the first time we're really going to get that, at least in what I've seen in the feature film aspect. I've seen all of them but Rise. And I will say that because I talk about we don't really know exactly what the sequel is going to be or what let's say it right now. Obviously, they're hinting at Shredder in the next films or whatever. We don't really know what iteration that's going to be. If it's going to be a Ninja Shredder or is it going to be a just a not to say mercenary, but just like a random like just whatever. We don't know what he's going to be. And I think that adds more to the idea of like really downplaying that ninja aspect and more in the mutation, the teenager aspect that this movie really focused on. And I do think that I do feel like it feels fresh for like the franchise as a whole, because that's not really what they focus on. And I really liked what we've gotten from this, because this whole movie, let's just face it, and we can kind of segue into this one now, is about mutants. It's about these not brand new characters, but these characters we haven't really seen before since the cartoon or some of the comics or whatever, and the toys come on the screen for the first time and really kind of just get out there. And I think I do have some mild criticisms of the movie, and I think my first criticism is there's probably too many characters. I would say there's probably too many. It's still fun. I don't think it ruins the movie by any means, but I do feel they sacrificed my boy Rocksteady and Bebop, a little bit. And that was disappointing for me. That was probably my biggest disappointment of the movie. And which I still think there's time, because for those who, again, spoiler alert, you basically they become good guys at the end. And that was a little bit of a surprise for me. MJ, what, you grew up on these iterations of the original cartoon. Were you kind of bummed like me? I was disappointed myself.
I feel like I wasn't necessarily disappointed, but I think I do 100% agree with you. I think there are too many mutants. I think, right, like they're the only ones whose name I could, other than Superfly, that I could, tell you what their name is. Now that I say this, the Gecko guy was another standout, but as I say call him Gecko guy because I don't remember his actual name. There you go, Mondo Gecko, Paul Rudd, great as always. But yeah, I do think there were a little bit too many. If you cut like two, maybe even three of them, I feel like it would have let each of them kind of shine. So I think Mondo Gecko probably had the most dialogue and most screen time of any of them, and he was great.
Well, it's Paul Rudd. Yeah, he was Paul Rudd. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah. But they also had John Cena in Seth Rogen for Bebop and Rocksteady. So I think I would almost assured we are going to see a lot more of them in the animated show or the sequel. If I had to guess, but I will be curious to see if they do turn them back into villains for that, because to really make them an antagonistic force in some way or another. Because that was definitely one of my biggest surprises from this movie, was them being kind of good guys.
I'm going to say this right now. I think it will be a giant upset if they don't somehow become bad guys again. I feel like only because they're just so stupid, right? Like but in all seriousness, right? Like they're so dumb, they probably would be tricked into like turning on the turtles the most out of all of them. I mean, all of them aren't very smart. Let's be real. Like all the bad guys, with the exception of Superfly, they all aren't very smart. They're just kind of like, I mean, like they kind of play up that aspect, right? And that throughout the movie. So it feels like at least some of them, if not those two specifically, will be turned back to bad guys. I'll throw it back to you, Mr. Rocketeer Michael. Was this one of your least favorite, one of your aspects you didn't like, the Bebop Rocksteady and some of the mutants?
More so the ending, like how you said, like how all of these mutants kind of became good guys, which I don't mind, because there's a team of animals, like going back to the Archie comics, called the Mutanimals, which at one point, like, all of these characters have been members of that team. So I kind of get it, but it does make me curious of like where they're gonna go in the next movie. Also, this is the second time John Cena has been in Turtles. He's the main villain in Rise of the Ninja Turtles. At least the first season.
Sock me sideways,
I'd say. And he's really good at it. The character's in season 2, but he stops playing the character at that point. I think he was doing Peacemaker.
All right, so really quickly, I just want to say for the record, our friend L here brings up a great point. So that's
what I didn't like.
Well, we'll get to this before we're done. This will be probably the last thing we talk about before we're done with the show. But I do think that L here brings up a great point that this might be the catalyst for some of them turning on the Turtles,
which I think would be really interesting to show. And because like you said, like all the other characters are pretty stupid, and I think Superfly intentionally kept them dumb,
of course,
compared to himself, like, so they wouldn't question him.
Right, yeah.
I wonder how much of that is kind of left over, because this movie had a bunch of rewrites, and there's certain characters who appeared more and some who like have really diminished roles in this movie. I kind of feel like Leatherhead got the least amount of like anything to do.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah,
like Wingnut had more than I thought she would. Leatherhead had like the least, and Genghis Frog. I mean, Genghis Frog is part of the punk frogs. Like, you can't just have one; you have to have all four. And so having just one is kind of weird. But what I think what happened, because like they've always talked about how they based this movie off of like the action figures they had when they were younger, and everybody had a Genghis Frog. Nobody ever had Napoleon Bonafrog, like the other, and that was the only other punk frog that had come out in the original toy line. And like everybody had Leatherhead.
Quick question. I did have Leatherhead, and he was awesome.
Yeah, see?
Was Genghis Frog the guy with he had like the shorts and like the blue jacket and like the flowers on it?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I had Genghis Frog. He was one of my favorites. I freaking loved him.
So they kind of based it on like all the characters that appear in these movies were kind of the most popular action figures for like guys our age. So like everybody had Mondo Gecko, everybody had Wingnut. Everybody had Ray Fillet, because he was also like a really big character in the Archie comics. So like I didn't have Wingnut because I didn't, but I had Genghis Frog. And
I didn't have the Gecko. I don't think I had.
I didn't have Mondo Gecko either. But I mean, and Rat King kind of appears in this movie. So when the Turtles are like interrogating all of the informants, and they're like beating up everybody, the last one they beat up is named Bad Bernie, and he's kind of got like rat-like features and a color scheme that's a little reminiscent of Rat King. But his name is Bad Bernie in the movie. In the art book that came out recently, his name is Rat King. So that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning. Like, there's a bunch of rewrites where like certain characters appear in a bigger capacity, and like, because I want to talk about like Baxter Stockman, they made this big deal that Giancarlo Esposito plays Baxter Stockman, which is like dream casting for that character.
Yep.
Like, and to find out that he's only in the yeah, like he needs to play him in live action. But to find out that he's only in the prologue, like that was so kind of disappointing to everybody. because like the amount that he's on screen is really good, and like he eats that role, but I mean, like he's gone in like 5 minutes.
Have you seen there's a Playmates toy of Superfly that has Baxter Stockman's clothing on.
So that's
it's showing
that's
you a little bit of those rewrites.
So that's kind of what I want to get it into. So, and Paul, you can pull up that picture I sent you in a bit because it's going to lead into that.
Okay. Okay.
So
I'll throw it up now.
So yeah, you can throw it up now. So in the original draft for the movie, the Turtles were going to go to the high school normally, and then Baxter Stockman was going to be a teacher at the school, and who turned into Superfly. That's why like a lot of the toys for Superfly have Baxter Stockman's clothing. And because traditionally Baxter Stockman is turned into a fly at some point in some continuity. So it's like you just kind of expect that. And this toy set, which is a Walmart exclusive, it's like modern versions of like 4 action figures that came out when we were younger. Like Paul said, like he had the astronaut Raph back when he was Space Cadet.
Love that thing. Loved it.
Great. These are really fun figures. And so when people saw this months ago, we were like, oh, that's really cool. And then like when you read the back of the box, it specifically describes the scene in the movie where like the Turtles like go to a costume party at the school and like hang out with all the students. And so everyone kind of assumed that this was going to happen in the movie, and then it never did. And so everyone was kind of like, oh, and that's when it turned out that this was a scene that was written for the movie. There's been leaked storyboards showing, you know, fights between certain characters. Like Bebop like really messes up Splinter at one point, but that was cut from the movie. And Shredder, who appears in the mid-credit scene at the end as like a sequel tease, he was the principal at the high school. And it was like, it was entirely a different movie. In fact, like I have the description that was leaked earlier this year. It says Leo, Raph, Donnie, and Mikey leave the comfort of their sewer home to face their greatest challenge yet, high school. As if navigating social cliques, staying out of trouble, and maintaining your GPA aren't hard enough, imagine doing it as a mutant turtle with a psychotic chemistry teacher, Baxter Stockman, who is trying to steal your blood to create a mutant army to unleash on the city. And it's like, that's such a wildly different movie than what we got in the end.
Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna say this right now. I think I personally think that was a good call. That was a good call. Same. They cut all that because I feel like it's so much more concise with Superfly. And I thought Ice Cube was fantastic as Superfly. Yeah, you know, and so is Superfly, is he an actual like toy figure of from Turtles that I'm not remembering, or
he's a brand new character.
Stockman?
He's a brand new character.
Okay, so he
like made just for this movie because he was.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So basically, what I was leading to was this was going to be Baxter Stockman, the one we all know, and then because they decided to switch gears, it became a brand new character, which is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny that he basically became Old Hob from IDW. Like the Superfly is basically.
I was thinking about that too.
Dude, there was an Old Hob reference. Mm-hmm. I thought. So the old cat keeps coming around. I'm like, it's Old Hob. It's Old Hob. All right, let's do this, people. Anyway, all right, Tim, I want you to your insight in all this. We'll kind of get your take, and we'll move on a couple more things, and we'll wrap up.
Just on the whole villain perspective.
Yeah, villains and like kind of too many characters, kind of a thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that. There maybe was a little bit too many mutants in there, just where they all didn't kind of get the same amount or story treatment or just their time to shine like some others did. And I was kind of going into it expecting like a big brawl between the Turtles and all the mutants in a big battle scene. It kind of got a chase scene instead with all of them, or a car chase scene. But it would have been really fun if we kind of got the Turtles facing off against all these different mutants. But for
like a Civil War airport fight.
Yeah, something like that. But they quickly just team up to go up against Superfly at the end, which was like, well, that was pretty quick to where we're kind of heading towards that moment to the big climactic sequence there. But I thought overall, the most part, it lived up to its name, Mutant Mayhem, obviously for what happens later on.
That's
but,
fair.
with all
Yeah,
the
that's
mutants
fair. They
in
told
there-
us what it was about. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
was gonna add. I think that the like the old that pitched version, the scrapped version of it, I think that sounded like such a departure. And I think that if they want to get there, it seems like they kind of wanted to get there, but this movie gets them there and earns it, I think, in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. 1000%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
No, exactly. Yeah, I don't. I just think that my biggest criticism is I wanted more fight scenes with the other mutants, and we didn't really get that necessarily. But at the same time, they cram a lot into this movie, and honestly, with my only exception of a couple like Bebop, Rocksteady becoming good guys at the end, and I wish they would have fought a little bit more with the other guys. I really wouldn't change anything else, to be quite honest. Like I think it was such a perfectly made and constructed. Good.
I was gonna say, especially too when the animation for the action sequence that we got before were so good. Like the turtles in action, especially in like that montage sequence we got of them taking down like the informants and their gangs. Just that was so beautiful.
The no diggity.
Animation of their fighting style and choreography. It was just so
That's
good.
the best part of the whole. That's the best part of the whole movie. I think is just it's. Yeah, I agree with you though that I if you think about it, that there isn't actually a lot of fighting.
There's not,
and I think and especially you can almost don't count the fight against the super duper fly or whatever he called himself at the end. Because it's a giant. It's not the scale. You don't get that choreography that you got in that fighting montage, or even the garage fight when they're kind of less confident and kind of still finding their footing. Hopefully, I'm sure with Shredder we will get a lot more like close, intimate combat in the future.
I mean, you can't have Shredder without foot ninjas. So
yes,
hopefully we get these guys.
No, I think we will personally. I really do. But I want to say also too that because this movie was more mutant focused, and again, it's less ninja focused at this point, which again, with the TV series and the movie, the sequel, they can build towards more of that fighting style, which I think is cool. Again, it's going back to that more of a this is a really stupid way to say it. You guys are gonna all make fun of me, but whatever. Kind of that Smallville aspect of like, let's develop ourselves, start from literally ground zero almost, and develop ourselves and see them become the heroes we all see them in other mediums, and everything. So there's a lot to me. The one thing about this movie, I think that does makes me so excited about it is that the potential of where it could go is really unlimited. To be quite honest, because they started off as such a very, very basic approach that now they can kind of gradually build, and that really has so much potential to be just a really unique thing that I'm really impressed about. In fact, that's what I would say it's so different about with Into the Spider-Verse in when you compare it. And we're gonna get to animation next here, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. And I do want to touch on April O'Neil a little bit too, before we're done. But I want to say that with this, what makes it so unique is that Spider-Verse, you kind of become Miles, and then he's kind of like, it's kind of like that. He's learning to become a hero, but he kind of learns so really quickly. And again, I love Spider-Verse a lot. It's one of my favorite animated movies. Both of them are incredible films. With this, because of that TV series, and then also the movie, there's a lot of story potential and build up and characterization and character build development that we're going to get that is so unique to, I think, in any of these franchises, whatever you choose. There's a lot of potential here that they're a lot of ground they'll be taking on, and all of that to be said with the animation style. It really does lend itself to be a really unique project that I'm really fascinated at. And I just think that this movie, people, if you're on the fence watching this movie, it's safe for anyone out there to watch. I've said before, I say family friendly, but I really mean all ages, right? But I do think anyone can sit down and enjoy this movie. It's a fun, cute little movie. but it is a great thing to watch because it not only has like a cute little message for families, but if you're like someone who likes to artistic, look at artistic, merit and things like that, I do think this movie has something that Spider-Verse kind of does, but it does a whole different direction. And Michael, you brought up a great, MJ, you brought up a great point. It's a lot of grime in this movie, and it's so stylized. And Michael, slap me around and tell me if I'm crazy, but it definitely feels they went right into the Mirage world and how Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman draw and took all of that into literally into the movie, because there's like some of the how they do these signs and all these backgrounds. I'm like, this is straight up Mirage, dude. Like, this is Mirage comics. Like,
everything feels so hand drawn, despite it being a CG movie. But it feels like an indie comic because everybody's kind of so off model, and it feels like it feels like underground artists doing this, and like the inspiration is like teenagers sketching in like their notebooks at school. Like that was where they were originally going with the art style, but it's evolved into like what you said. Like it feels like something that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird would have drawn in Mirage. And I mean, even Kevin has said that. Like he's talked about how much he loves this movie, and he specifically said it feels like something I would have drawn.
Yeah,
it's all there.
I love the use of like 2D elements too, like the smoke, which is just like it's basically just like it's just like 2D cards doing the smoke effects. And like there's like a couple explosions at the end that when they blow up the machine before he becomes Super Duper Fly, and it's like an explosion, but then they like drew like little like it looks like a marker on top of the fire, and it's like it was so neat to see the first time, and when I saw the movie again, I was like, oh, like that. It was really cool to see that.
Yeah. MJ, do you want to add any more about the animation style?
No, I think I mostly covered it. Like I think, like I said, it was such a fresh take, and I'm super excited to see. And I think the TV series is 2D.
Yes.
So very curious to see how they take this style and adapt it to 2D. Because I think it ports over really well, right? Like we said, it comes from it takes a lot of comic book influence. I think it'll look just as great in 2D. And so yeah, just excited to kind of see where they take it further.
Yeah, true. Tim, what's your take on the animation style and kind of like that whole like for me, and it sounds like Michael agreed with me as well, that Mirage template and design of how and literally putting that into the movie itself.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just gotta echo with what all you guys said, because I just completely agree. I love the animation style, and when we saw the trailer for the first time, it did get those Spider-Verse comparisons. But as earlier, it's like as you're watching the movie, like you're not really feeling that you're just watching like a Spider-Verse ripoff or anything like that. It has its own unique style, and it's great. Yeah, it's just real great how and unique for this version of the Turtles that I just really like so much. So yeah, it deserves all the praise that it's getting.
And for the really quickly, really for the record, I was worried about that. It being a because when I saw the trailer, I thought it was great, but I'm like, this feels exactly like Spider-Verse. And I think that might be where some people are. One, the Turtles, like, Turtles, also after being the heels of Across the Spider-Verse, if maybe there was more time away from it, maybe it wouldn't be. But I do feel people are like, oh, get our Spider-Verse ripoff now. Like, I want to make it very clear. If you're on the fence of watching this movie because that might trickle in your mind, I see where you could think that, because I thought the same thing in my head. When I watched the movie, I was like, no, it is completely unique. It's unique enough from Spider-Verse that it's only used it as a springboard. It's not a one-for-one copy, in my opinion.
And I think I was gonna say, I think the way that I think really the big influence, it doesn't really look anything like Spider-Verse. If you look at this Bebop, right? I think it's why it reminds you of Spider-Verse is because that's the only other movie that's really pushed animation, like big budget, like cinema animation really forward and like forever. So I think that's why you come and think about Spider-Verse, because it's the only thing that looks different.
I think a really good example of like seeing, it's like this movie feels like you felt when you first saw Into the Spider-Verse back in 2018, like where you were blown away by that animation. That's how this should make you feel.
It does, and it did 100%.
And kind of since then, because there's been other movies. A big one is The Mitchells versus the Machines on Netflix, which was co-directed by Jeff Rowe, who did this movie. And a lot of what you see here is in that movie. Like that movie is kind of a template to how we get to here.
I need to see that. I need to.
You should. It's really good. It's really good. And even then, like other movies have come out since then as well. Like Bad Guys from DreamWorks, which is a great movie, but severely underperformed. Like nobody remembers it, but like I loved it.
Did it come out during the pandemic? Basically?
Yeah, it was like early into the pandemic, like 2021. And then another one was the Puss in Boots movie from last year, like where they're kind of emulating all of these these Spider-Verse styles, like, you know, quote unquote, because that's the big one that broke out and was like, that's why everybody thinks of Spider-Verse, even though we have all of these other examples. But yeah, sorry.
No, good. This is great. So I have a couple more things and we'll wrap up. I do want to talk about April O'Neil, but I also want to talk about the end of the movie because I do feel it's important. Then we'll kind of say our final thoughts. I know I don't want to get too in the weeds about fandoms being, you know, stupid and being like, oh, you know, this or that about this is not a completely different, same April O'Neil that I saw when I was whatever. I don't know. I listen, I don't want to give too much credence to it because I frankly don't give a shit. Like I just don't care. Like give me a good character. Give me, I don't care if you race bend it, gender bend it, you know, sexual orientation bend. I don't care. It's good character, good character. The bad character's bad character, regardless of what all that shit. Okay. Just gonna say that right now. And
my thing is like, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I got a lot to say about that.
No. I know you do. Yeah. But
my thing
just go ahead.
My thing about it is that April's race has never been a factor in her character backstory at all. She's defaulted to a white woman. In the original notes from Kevin and Peter, she was Asian. She's named after Kevin's ex-wife, who was black. It's like April's history is kind of all over the place, and it's kind of the fault of Kevin and Peter for never correcting it, and they've always kind of retconned their own story. And then there's a great blog called TMNT Entity who did a very authoritative, like, this is the history of why people think this, and like gives examples of like which covers printed when, and to kind of help with the confusion. And that's always my reference, like when I'm explaining this to people. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. It does not matter what race she is because it doesn't inform her character. She's never been Irish or anything else.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And frankly, I just because this is such a, and especially with this specific iteration of the Turtles, it's so unique that it's even if it was informed, it doesn't matter because like it's a completely different thing. She's in high school, for Christ's sakes, you know. I mean, like, let's be real here.
That's the other creepy thing too, is like dudes are trying to sexualize a teenager. Like, that's what's weird about it.
I don't get it. Fandoms can be fandoms. No matter what fandom you're in, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Turtles, you know, football, baseball, NBA basketball. Am I right, MJ? I mean, it's dude. There's all kinds of crazy ass people out there, and
bad takes abound everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere. People are gonna people, as my best friend Justin Bulger will say. You know, and he's absolutely right. And the thing is, April O'Neil in this movie, I thought was again, I wasn't expecting Channel 6 News April O'Neil from the cartoon or from the movies. It was a high school student. The humor thing was a little over the top. I thought the puke thing, but I loved it still. I still thought it was hilarious at the same time. That's how good it was. And I just gotta say, like, if you have a problem with it, I'm not gonna judge you on it, to be honest. That's your opinion. I don't care. I don't lose sleep over the race of April O'Neil and her being thick. Hate to break it to you. Like, I don't lose sleep over it. I don't care about it. she was a great character. She's funny. I be honest, I loved her story arc of like, overcoming her fears. Like, I really liked that. Like, I don't care if she was white, black, Asian. Well, I don't care. It was fun. It was cute. So,
I love her story of like the arc that she has with the turtles. Like, they both want to be heroes for selfish reasons, and it's like all five of them had kind of learn at the same time that that they were doing this for the wrong reasons. Like, they specifically, because this is, we didn't even talk about like some of the references. Like, this is a world where the MCU exists. Like, they reference it several times, and they want to become heroes because that's what they see. That's what they want to emulate that. And because they think that's going to get them the fame that they want. And they learn at the end of the movie that
brilliant. And that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. That's an original take. And I love that. All right. And and this kind of leads into like that. Great. Thank you for the segue, Mr. Templeton. But seriously, this is perfect. And if anyone wants to say anything, Tim, if you want to wrap up really quick about April or MJ, any thoughts on April before we move on?
I just want to say, I loved the take on the character. Again, it was super fresh. AO is super talented actress. She was great. If you've seen her in The Bear or anything else, like, she's always awesome in everything she does. So it was cool to see her in here as April.
Yeah. Or Tim?
Yeah, I just Michael was saying how like she went on almost like the same arc that the turtles did in this movie, and they both learn and grew together over the course of the story, which we don't get very often. I mean, this isn't the first time that April has been her story where she was a teenager and went to high school. That was first done in the 2012 series, but this is like the first time she went on the same arc and journey with the turtles and grew along with the turtles by the time the story wrapped up. So I just really love that aspect about it, and thought they did a great job with this new take.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think that for me, I think really worked really well. Of kind of actually in the granted, in a lot of other renditions, they don't feel like that much like teenagers. I think
they don't.
This version of the classic version of April, whatever you wanted to, that version of April hanging out with these turtles would be really weird. If just they're very clearly like teenage boys, and then them hanging out and having a crush on this adult woman reporter lady would feel weird. And I think this is the most natural fit for embracing them and making them like even a tighter pair, by like making them high school friends, like literally.
And this is where I want to really talk about, as we wrap up here. And again, we all agree April was way better. And Elle, I'm with you. It went on a little too long, but I still liked it. But it was too long. But I think that's the whole point. They really want to drive that home. The kids, and let me tell you, the kids loved it. The kids loved it. So, and I kind of want to end on. We've talked a lot about this different iteration of the turtles, and I gotta tell you, as Seth Rogen in the interviews, he really emphasized how I give him a lot of credit, man. Him and Goldberg and another writer. I know you said, Michael, that they rewrote this movie a bunch, but what I think is really fascinating, and Seth talked about it, was the crazy thing about the Ninja Turtles is that the teenage aspect is always downplayed a lot. And, and I know the hardcore guys here will probably maybe we'll push back a little bit on that. I don't know, but either way, I think we all agree, though, for the most part, that's usually the one thing we always forget. It's just usually it's just a part of the name, and I will fully agree with that. What's fascinating is that Seth Rogen and Goldberg, they were able to go into this movie and give us the teenage aspect, and maybe given us the freshest take since the IDW series, which that's saying a lot if you know me, and the freshest take on the Ninja Turtles ever. And this aspect of the turtles, I thought was brilliant, because if you would have told me that they'd be going to high school at the end of the movie, I'd be like, that's going to be stupid. It is. And MJ, I think you talked about how this is earned. They go at their journey with April is all earned, where like you root for them going to school. And I love that. I never would a million years would have thought the Turtles are going to school, and how you brought Michael, the MCU, like they want to be heroes, and that's kind of of course the kids who grew up on Marvel MCU films would be like, I want to be a superhero. Like that makes sense. And I love that. And I love the fact that we're going to be able to see them be normal kids in high school as Ninja Turtles. It's brilliant. Like and this is where I think it's so brilliant. They were able to take that ridiculous, stupid concept and actually give it a lot of heart and merit. And I got to tell you guys, and I'm being 100% serious, I got a tiny bit emotional when Michelangelo's like face thing comes down and Splinter grabs it. I was like I got a little emotional. Like, am I alone? Like
it's a great bookend because we start the movie before we meet the Turtles with Leo putting his mask on, and with the Turtles at the end, like discarding those masks. It's a great bookend, and I 100% agree with you. Like I was kind of in shock the first time I watched the movie, but the second time I watched the movie, that's where it hit me. So
okay.
Yeah, it has. This might just be my own ignorance. Is there another rendition of the Turtles you guys can think of that leaves them in a position where they are this exposed in this public?
Yeah. Word.
There's a in pretty much every version. They eventually like 87, the 87 cartoon, was always kind of wishy-washy with it, but the city of New York and the world knew who the Turtles were. They would still like hide, but the public knew who they were. And then I think 2003 eventually got there. And then by the end of 2012 and the rise of the TMNT movie, they publicly saved the city. So it always gets there eventually. But this is the first time that we've seen
even the IDW stuff later on is like totally different circumstances, but
I didn't want to spoil it for Paul.
Don't spoil it for me, please.
Yeah, but this is the first time that we've seen them. This is the first time that we've really seen them integrate with the city, and that's what felt so weird about it, because usually people know about them, but it's kind of like Batman. Are they rumors?
They're segregated, but they're segregated from everyone. Yeah, and that's what's so brilliant, is that they got what, and that's what I think is the heart of this movie. I think people are going to underestimate is that aspect of the fact that no, that they're going in to be accepted. There's so many great themes, and I think rich potential of being people feeling like they're outcast, for kids, that they can now live through as the Turtles. And I think that is so important for and I listen, I get it. This is all for commerce. This is not they're not in this for the art aspect for the most part.
They're selling toys.
They're into it for what you got right in front of you. That's
I know.
Exactly.
And they got my money. But I say that, but I do think this stuff, and I've argued with my wife. I feel this is important because I learned a lot of life lessons, to be honest, through franchise films, like Star Wars, like my Marvel comics that I read as a kid. I learned life lessons, and they were my grim fairy tales that, and that's what this is. And I think it's important for children to have something like this where they can relate to, and young kids, 5, 6, 8, 9-year-olds, that they can look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and see these kids being outcast but being accepted, being themselves. And I think that's so so important for it. And I was amazed that we got it, and the fact that wow, this is crazy, we're getting this, and how fresh and exciting it is. And Tim, I'm gonna throw it to you. With that part of the movie, was that a surprise to you? What was your thoughts on it? And going into this whole, because if those who don't know, we're going to get a 2-season series about them in high school, which is phenomenal, by the way. What's your take on that kind of going forward or after, that reveal and what your thoughts on it going now into that TV series.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by it once it happened, because I thought I had the rest of the movie played out of what they were going to do by the time we got to the big climactic battle where the news reports were saying there's like a mutant attack led by these 4 turtles. I thought, okay, so it's going to be where they got to accept being heroes and doing it for the non-selfish reason to be accepted by humanity. We still got to be heroes, even though we're not going to be accepted. This is going to be kind of like our path and our journey throughout life. But nope, they just went full blown to where they do get accepted and they get to live out their dream and going in high school. And to be honest, as I was watching, it's like, I don't know how I feel about this. It's because it's so different than anything that we've got before. But by the time it was over, I was thinking about it kind of on the way home. I was like, you know what? I'm actually really glad that they did this, because it's just, we've got so many versions of the Turtles now. And it's great when the creators behind a particular gets to leave their mark and see their vision on it, even if it's radically different, but yet still staying true to the core of what we love about the Turtles. And this ending with them going to high school, I felt did something completely different with the franchise, but I think leaves it in an exciting ways. And that's, again, what makes me excited about the upcoming series, about exploring more stories with them in high school. And I believe too, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the descriptions that came out says that a lot of these episodes over the course of 2 seasons are going to focus on an individual turtle where they're going to be separated from each other and kind of have to experience life and grow without being with the brothers in certain circumstances. So I remember reading that like the direction of where the series is going to go. And I guess
by calling it like Tales of the TMNT, by calling it Tales of the TMNT, like that's kind of a legacy title. Like that's a big thing to call it that. Like Tales of the Jedi was like, that's kind of a thing. Tales of the TMNT is like, right? Wait, Dark Horse or the cartoon?
Effing both, man.
Oh, I actually haven't seen the cartoon yet. I missed the whole series.
You disgust me. Anyway,
you know what? I'm a recovering Star Wars fan, so give me some time.
I'm aware. Continue.
But Tales of the TMNT, like that's a legacy title, and like that's always been kind of an anthology thing for Turtles. Like going back to Mirage, like that was how they filled in a lot of the backstory, because that they weren't filling in the backstory in the main Mirage book. You had to read Tales of the TMNT and then like find where certain things fit in. By naming it this, like it's going to be, I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be kind of an anthology series, where we're going to see all those different adventures, like where the boys are going to be split up and have to do their own things. We may get stories specifically about the mutants living in the sewer, like, you know, what do Bebop and Rocksteady do during the day? Yeah, kind of thing. It's going to be written or I can't remember if it's written or show run by some guys who worked on 2003, 12, and Rise. So it's like there's a pedigree that's going into this show that I'm really excited about.
That's genius.
For it. Knowing who's behind.
No, that is interesting, because I think you have a chance to really develop those characters and not give fans like the same thing in the theater, because the scale is going to be toned down, but you can still like have like some fun adventures and have it like be marketable to kids and to keep watching and keep them engrossed in the franchise. Because as you can see here, like these toys are fantastic. These are great toys.
Yeah,
these are great toys. I just knock them down. I just knock them over. With that one complaint,
it's like the old Clone Wars cartoon between episodes 2 and 3. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's exactly what this is, and that's why I'm so excited about it, because it just really did kick off a new era of Ninja Turtles. And
yeah, it did. I'm back. I'm back, baby. Like I'm back. Like I'm in. Like good. Seriously, I pre-ordered the 4K and I'm ready to go. Like, yeah, I'm ready to go. So, so I got both of you guys' takes on it. MJ, any last words on like kind of like that story? If I didn't get you already, I'm not sure if I did or not.
I think I kind of touched on it, but yeah, I think it's super exciting to see where they go. I'm very curious how much we get, or any of Shredder, like the Foot Clan, in this series. I presume not really. Maybe you get a little bit of Foot Clan here and there, but I would presume not, just because you're gonna have to assume that your most 90% of your audience hasn't seen the cartoon that's going to come back for the sequel movie. So you probably don't want to put you don't want to have Shredder show up there until that movie, I would presume. But
well, I mean, you could have, if it's an anthology series like Clone Wars, you could have a whole episode about Shredder, but not face the Turtles.
that's true. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think I don't think we'll see that relationship established.
Oh yeah, for
until
sure,
the movie.
100%.
But you could totally, you could give some Shredder backstory and kind of,
which would be pretty. Again, there's this. I'm gonna, for one thing, I'm gonna watch the show regardless. But I'm really fascinated how this does, because this could inform. If this does well, this could inform how franchises and films and TV series, interact for kids shows like this in the future. Because there's a lot. They are taking some giant chances here, and I think, I want to support the chances, because I think this is valuable storytelling. One last thing before I do, and am I just stupid, or am I like, this is obviously Krang, right?
So yeah, so this was one of the things I wanted to talk about was.
All right, last thing.
I don't know if she was I don't want to think she was a wasted character, but I think it was a waste. It was a waste of calling her Cynthia Utrom, like, without having a kind of tease that she is an Utrom or Krang. Like, cause she's wearing, like,
I was waiting for it throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, same. Like, she's like, those are kind of Krang's colors. She's wearing the glasses.
The glasses, that's what.
One thing I loved was, like, the TCRI troopers. They it was on their backpack. They had, like, a little, like, tuning fork coming above their head, which is like what the Krang had. So that was just the cute little visual reference I got. But it's like, calling her Cynthia Utrom and not revealing that she's an Utrom, it, like, felt weird. It was like waiting for the anticipation to pay off, and it's like it just never did. And TCRI kind of, like, they mention it so much, but it's like you don't really get what TCRI is, like, other than, like, generic military. We're gonna make, like, mutant animals to use, in, whatever. Which, like, the mutants she was naming off were referenced, like Snake Tails one from Archie, that was, like, a really deep cut. But, like, yeah, like, not having her be an actual character in the end was kind of like, I just a wasted opportunity for me.
That's fair. Well, guys, this was a great. I didn't mean to go this long, but I thought we had some great conversations, though. Honestly, I really, really dug what we were talking about, because I do think this isn't, like, maybe it's not going to be as, like, groundbreaking as, let's say, maybe a Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, or Across the Spider-Verse, but I don't think it's, like, it's in the stratosphere. And there's some really cool, really unique stuff they did in this movie that I can't wait. Again, the comic stuff, not just the Easter eggs, but the stylization from Mirage comic books original, that was amazing. I love that. And I think this very well could be, like, the first kind of the slow step to bringing Turtles fandom, back to, like, going crazy again, which it's brought me back. I'm all in, man. I freaking, this could be my gateway back into Turtle fandom, because I love the IDW comics. I love them, but they're not, like, in my face all the time. Unfortunately, I wish comic books were more in my face in the regular world, but the binge exists to do that, but I got a long way to go, obviously, or ever going to make that point. But the thing is, this movie is in my face, and I love it to death. And I am itching to watch it again. I just won't have time to go watch in the theater again. But when this comes out on 4K, I'll be watching the hell out of it. So thank you guys for all joining us. I'll go around the horn, pimp your stuff. MJ, I'll go with you first, because you're pretty much like, whatever. You don't really care about pimping your stuff. But I wanted to throw it to you first. All right. Thanks for coming on, friend.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. As always, excited to chat about whatever we've got going on. Definitely excited to chat Turtles. But yeah, anyone wants to follow me, you can follow me at MJ Daily on. I don't want to call it X. I'm gonna still call it Twitter, but you can find me on whatever the hell it's called this week or next week. But yeah, that's me.
And if you like basketball.
Not right now. A whole lot. The season hasn't started. Give it like a couple months. It'll be a lot of basketball.
And Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, a little bit of that. A lot of games, I'd say, in general.
Yeah, I would say games, and also Taylor Swift.
That's not me driving that, you know.
No,
But,
yeah, okay. I'll just say, as always, my friend, I really appreciate you coming on, man. We'll talk after we're done. I have another proposition for you, but I digress. Mr. Tim, I talk to you a lot, but I always adore when I can get you on and we can definitely talk turtles. You are responsible for getting me back into turtles, and I'm just glad. It always seems fitting. I always have you on when I talk about the turtles.
Yes, I love getting to chat with you about it. So thanks for having me on again. I just love too that your fandom has been ignited again for TMNT like it never has before. Because it sounds like this movie is doing for you what the 2012 series did to me, and that's awesome because I haven't looked back since then as far as being absorbing almost everything Turtles now. So yeah, you could follow me on Twitter at TimG311, and then if you want more Turtles talk from me, me and my friend Dane just recorded our latest Echoing Nerd podcast episode reviewing Mutant Mayhem, where we kind of fully go into the movie scene by scene, or sequence by sequence, probably more accurate. But yeah, that episode's out now. You can check us out on Twitter there at Echoing Nerds. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun tonight.
Yes, it has. And last but not least, Mr. Templeton, Mr. Rocketeer. Thanks for coming on. We'll definitely have you on again super soon. You've been really I'm enjoying talking with you about turtles and other things. Obviously, you're on the Rocketeer episode, but what name your podcast and where they can find you and follow you, all that stuff.
You can check me out every week on Turtle Tuesday at the Ninja Turtle Power Hour. That is my main show. Comes out every Tuesday. Our review of Mutant Mayhem just dropped today, so you can follow at Ninja Turtle PH on Twitter and Instagram, and the Ninja Turtle Power Hour, like fully spelled out, on Facebook. If you want to follow me personally, my name is It's the Rocketeer, just like it is spelled out right here under my face, where I will shitpost about pretty much anything, but mostly talking about Ninja Turtles anyway. And yeah, Paul, thank you again for having me on the show, because
of course,
I love this show, man. I forgot the other show that I was just doing before I jumped on here. I also do the news every week on Turtle Recall, which is another just fun podcast with my friend Jason. So we do that live here on YouTube at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays.
No, and thank you for saying you love the show. I really do. It really does mean a lot to me, and the fact that you say that, any compliments is always nice. So I really appreciate it.
I told you I try to watch this while I'm recording the other show.
That's
so
hilarious.
It's
awesome.
it's really distracting. I wish we had different times. So
I know Tuesday's a good night. I may have to change it because a lot of people are doing Tuesdays now, and I feel like I had no idea. I just picked up I'm like Tuesday seems like a good day, and it seems like everyone thinks that. So I'm like, I might have to rethink my approach a little bit eventually, but we'll see. But yeah, I digress. Anyway, go subscribe, like the videos, all that jazz. Next week we have what do we have next? Oh, next week we have. I need to confirm. One of my people I haven't heard from in a while, so I'm a little worried about Mr. Baby himself. He's young and crazy, but miss him. He'll be back next week. We'll be talking about Heir to the Empire, comic book adaptation. Ooh. So right before Ahsoka drops, we'll be going a little Heir to the Empire action. So check that out next week, and also other special guests too. Lots of exciting things there. And Chris Clow is in here today. He couldn't make the show because he didn't watch the movie, but I'll say it for him. Go ahead and read more comics